There's enough and most research around storytelling, how it's also more effective than data, and especially effective if you combine the two. But let's decode storytelling a little bit and go deeper and try and understand how does storytelling work in the business context of things. So here's a question for you. What forums, so please type in the chat window, what forums do you think you can use storytelling in? What forums or situations could you use storytelling in the work context? Let's see in the chat window your responses. What forums or situations can you use storytelling in? Breaking ice, of course. Town halls, yes, absolutely town halls. Presentations, okay. Trainings, okay. Anyway, we need to engage somebody, client pitch, team meeting, approval of a business case, leadership talk, conferences. Absolutely. Absolutely. Pep talk, giving a pep talk to people internally. Absolutely. And that's the point, really. Storytelling can be used in a variety, in a myriad of contexts, in a huge variety of situations, whether it's one-to-one or one-to-many. Even when you're giving feedback, even when you're having coaching conversations with people, you can use stories. Extremely, extremely powerful skill that we can use in many, many different situations. And the work that we do in storytelling is based on what we call the two pillars of storytelling. At TransforMe, the two pillars of storytelling are telling the right story and telling the story right. And in telling the right story, it's really about identifying your key message, identifying which out of the 8 patterns should you use in this situation, and then figuring out how do you deliver it in the right way, whether you're doing it virtual, one-to-one, or one-to-many. And there are a couple of elements there. Neeta started off the session talking about characters. Characters is one of the elements to keep in mind when you're telling the story. So we're going to take a look at some of these patterns and talk about how this works. But even before that, most important thing that we've got to understand, and now we're getting into the science of storytelling. We've already gotten into it, but getting a little bit into the structure of storytelling. The first thing we've got to remember is that storytelling is a form of communication. It's a form of expressing, it's a form of communication. And when we can communicate in one of two ways. We can communicate in one of two ways. The first way in which we can communicate is what we call the inductive style. What's the inductive style? The inductive style is about giving your key message and then explaining it. And I told you that I'm going to use this word key message over and over again. Some people get irritated because I use it excessively, because for me, the key message is more important than the story. If you don't have the runway, what use is it to fly a plane? So the key message, so inductive style is you tell people what you want to tell them and then you explain it, right? It's a pretty straightforward way, and that's the kind of result that you may get in an attempt to influence or inspire or engage if you use an inductive style, right? The second way of expressing is what is called the deductive style. So inductive and deductive. Deductive comes from the word deduce, right? If somebody can tell me in the chat window, what do you understand by the word deduce? What do you think would the meaning of deduce be? Deduce. Let's see in the chat window. To arrive at something based on the information received, right? So did they deduce? Absolutely. Derive the meaning indirectly. Absolutely. Deduce is about connecting the dots and deriving a meaning. When you use a deductive style, you're making the audience do some hard work. It's important for them to connect the dots. So you're not making it very obvious. You're making them engaged in your story and making them connect the dots, saying, But which also means that if you don't do it well, they could get lost and say, what the hell are you talking about? Which also happens if you don't tell the story right. Yeah. So deductive style, the biggest difference in the deductive style from the inductive style is that in the inductive style, you start with the key message and then you explain it. Whereas in a deductive style, the key message is not the start point, but the key message is the arrival point. You arrive at your key message in a deductive style, and you arrive at your key message through a story. So you start with a story and you arrive at the key message. Does that make sense? How many of you remember Mark's story in Malaysia? Give me a yes if you remember Mark's story in Malaysia. Yeah, you remember that. Okay, cool. Yeah. How many of you remember what was his key message? What was he trying to tell the brand and marketing people? Just type that in. What was his key message? What was his key message? No, that 40% was his first key message. What is his actual key message? Go digital with us. Hiring Mark's firm for digitization. You should. They're a pretty good firm. Complex and complicated, absolutely. Sometimes gives returns, absolutely. Sometimes complex situations give results, absolutely. That was his key message. His key message was that sometimes things that are complex and complicated are the ones that give you results, right? Now, if he had used an inductive style, means that he would have gone up on stage and he would have started off saying, "Good morning, everyone. I know our product is complex and complicated, but it gives results. I'm here to tell you how we can deliver results." Sure, you're accepting it, but there's no punch, there's no appeal, this emotional appeal is missing. The relatedness, the connection, the credibility is missing. The moment you build a story, a narrative around that, and through that narrative you arrive at the key message, the same key message that you would have said without the story, when you say it with the story, it's a lot more believable. It's a lot more relatable. It's a lot more inspiring. It's a lot more engaging. It's a lot more connected. You see what I'm saying? And that's really the craft that we've got to master. How do we understand the real pain point of the audience that we're speaking to? How do we then backtrack and find out what's the key message from that? And how do we then build a story? So it's really a process of reverse engineering from understanding what is it that needs to be said. I'll give you another business example. I'm reading a private chat around an epiphany moment. Yeah. So let me give you another example to help you understand the difference between inductive and deductive style. So another tech organization I was coaching, and I was working with Sam, one of the product leaders. And Sam, I was coaching him because he had to make a pitch to a client, and he wanted to use storytelling in it because he'd understood the value of it. The context was pretty simple. Sam was working with this. So Sam's company was a service provider to this client, and they were working with this client to improve the level of personalization for their customers. Personalization is when you're on an app and you start searching for something and suddenly you keep getting ads for that. So that's kind of personalization, an example at a very broad level. So Sam's company was helping their client with personalization and things were going well. And when I spoke with Sam, I asked him, "So what do you want to do?" He said, Sam said, "I want to help my client understand that his customers also want privacy, not just personalization. And he needs to add some tools to his portfolio. And we can provide those tools to balance between, you're doing a lot of personalization, but you need to have privacy also. Customers are wanting it now because they're realizing, ki boss, theek hai, personalization mein maza aa gaya, but now I need privacy." I'm sure many of you can relate to that, right? And I said, "So what's the challenge?" He said, "Well, the challenge is that the customer doesn't seem to think that privacy is a big concern. He doesn't want to invest in it. He says, let's just continue personalization. But I know things will go south if he doesn't do that now." So we worked and we spoke. I won't take you through the entire coaching process that I did with him, but Sam came up with this story where he went to his client and he actually told his client. So he actually signed up with this client, first of all. That's the result. And he started off his conversation with the client, telling his client that, I've got 2 kids, and just recently it was my younger daughter's birthday. Not recently, about 8-10 months back, it was my younger daughter's birthday, and I decided to gift her a school bag. And online I had and he used an online example because the client is an online merchant, as you can imagine. So he said, online I found a nice concept of a school bag that you can completely personalize. And he's telling his client that. So I could put my daughter's name, her picture, her favorite food, her favorite destination, this, that, her favorite band, and all of that. So I got that bag made with all of her favorite things, and I gave it to my daughter, who's 6 years old, and she loved it. She was so happy. She gave me the tightest hug and she said, "You're the greatest dad ever. Thank you so much. Such a personal gift. I love it. I'm going to show it off to my friends. It has all my favorite things." And then Sam said that, about 1 month back, it was my elder daughter's birthday, who's 16 years old. And I decided to do the same thing for her. I bought an online bag, which I could personalize with all of her favorite things, her name, photographs, favorite food, favorite people, favorite rock band, and I got all that collage made on a bag. And I gifted her, my 16-year-old daughter, that bag on her birthday a few days back. I have never seen my daughter so angry, Sam said. She was really upset. She said, "How dare you? Why would you do that?" I said, "What do you mean? These are your favorite things?" She said, "Yes, these are my favorite things, but I don't want the world to know everything about me. I respect my privacy, and I wish you would too." And that's the day I realized that as kids evolve, at one point of time they thrive on personalization, but as they become bigger, they start needing their privacy. And consumer behavior is not that different. Consumers want a lot of personalization early on in the cycle on the online merchant place. But as they evolve in their journey, after a point of time, they start really wanting their privacy. And I'm here to talk to you about how we can strike a balance between the two for you by using product A in conjunction with product B. Do you see what I'm saying? Can I get any comments in the window? How did you find the story connecting with? Are you seeing the primer and the paint? The inductive and the deductive? The getting people ready to receive your message? Are you seeing that come through in some of these examples? Yeah? Okay, and like this, there are numerous examples that I can give you in the work context where stories work. I can also give you a few examples where stories haven't worked. So I'm not saying that stories work in all situations, but they certainly work in many situations. And they certainly work in many more situations than our mind would initially tell us. You know, like that friend of mine or the client of mine sometimes who thinks they're Nostradamus and they can predict that it's not going to work.